work, group assignments, group projects. I'm sure some of you are a little bit anxious when I say those things. You may have had some experiences in the past that have been really frustrating for you. Less than fabulous group experiences. But we are going to be working in teams and groups for the rest of our lives. So we are going to learn more about how to be more effective in working with others in groups. So in this unit, we cover quite a few things. I'm going to divide this unit up into 3 videos. This first video is going to discuss what a group is, how groups develop, and the complexity of groups. The second video is going to cover some of the group and team concepts that we need to know, and things that we need to be on the lookout for when we evaluate our group members on the group project that you're going to be working on. And the final video is going to go over how to problem solve and go over leadership. So let's look at what a group is. A group is at least 3 people. That is key. 2 people would be interpersonal, and you'll later see in this video the dynamics of the group change. So 2 people is not a group. You must have 3 in order for you to have a group. The maximum number of people, that's not so crucial. Most people would say about 15. You share a common purpose. You hopefully feel a sense of belonging with the group, and you're exerting influence on one another. A team is a little bit more coordinated with the work in working together to achieve a real specific common goal. I'll give you a few more details about the difference between groups and teams here in a couple moments. There are different types of groups, and they're all going to operate slightly differently. I mean, you have groups of friends and family, and some of the concepts that you're going to learn in this unit don't necessarily apply specifically to a family group or support groups where you have personal issues that you're working through with a support group, maybe with a counselor, a therapist, right? That's going to work a little bit differently than a social group or a study group. But we are going to be working on a group problem solving project in this course. And so our focus is primarily with problem solving groups. There are a few distinctions between groups and teams. Teams develop a clearly defined responsibilities for the team members. There are clearly defined rules for how a team operates, and teams also develop clear goals. Teams also are very strategic and figure out a way to coordinate their efforts. I think the best example of a team would be in athletics, sports. If you have a football team, each person has a specific set of skills in professional sports that they're hired right for that position. And very few have multiple positions, right? And so they're very skilled. And when you have each group member with certain responsibilities and utilizing their strengths and their skill sets, and you have very specific rules of how it's going to operate, you have a really clear goal, teams tend to be more cohesive in working together. And so not all groups are a team, but all teams are a group. The idea would be it would be great if we could have a group become a team. That would be ideal. One of the things that's not really covered in a lot of textbooks is making group decisions. And this is actually covered in the last video. But I wanted you to know sometimes groups are great, and you need groups for very complex issues. For example, when COVID hit, that an individual couldn't solve that needed a group. They created task force and all these different types of groups and meetings that could help problem solve. But some things are more urgent or more simple, and understanding when a person should make an individual or a group decision, that's something that managers and supervisors would have. And so this actually could be utilized in a job interview if you're applying to be a manager or a supervisor, that you do have some understanding on how to make decisions and when it's important for an individual or a group to make some decisions. So I think this is just good practical information to keep in mind. You're introduced to Tuckman's model of group development. This is very similar to childhood development. Babies and toddlers, they're expected to be able to do certain things at certain ages, and groups tend to work the same way. And so this model just explains these are the natural stages that usually occur in a group. And when you understand what the forming stage is, and the storming, and the norming, and the performing, and the adjourning, when you understand that these stages are normal, when your group is in one of those stages, it shouldn't surprise you. And you might feel a little bit more calm about it because you know this is a typical stage. How do we best work through this stage? What can we do? And so I have a summary for you on this particular slide. There's more detail, of course, in your textbook that you can reference. The complexity of group communication. And as I said with our first slide, when we have two people, which is a dyad, which is interpersonal, the dynamics are different. When you add a third person, and that's why groups need to have a minimum of 3, the dynamics change. So here I have at the top of the slide, if there are 2 people, right, it's a dyad. That's one relationship, person 1, person 2. So on the next line, we have 3 people. So here are 3 people in a group. And really, we have 3 relationships here, 3 sets of dyads. 1 and 2 have a connection, 2 and 3 have a connection, and 1 and 3 have a connection, either in the way they communicate or if they're actually, friends or related somehow. So those are 3 sets of dyads. But then we have a 1 total group, and that's actually a relationship. So really, in a group of 3 people, you're dealing with 4 relationships. Well, that's why groups can be so frustrating. You know what one relationship is like and the conflict you can have with just one other person. Now magnify that by 4. 3 people is actually 4 relationships happening. And so now we're managing 4 relationships. Let's look at this last line. What happens when there are 4 people in your group? There's actually 6 sets of dyads, 4 groups of 3 members each, a total group of 4 members. That's 11 relationships. Oh my word. That's why they can be so challenging and so frustrating. Adding just one more member to your group creates a significantly higher number of relationships to manage. There are some challenges with larger groups. Sometimes there are more formal interactions instead of the informal, and informal interactions can be healthy in a group situation. There might be less opportunity for individual members to communicate or contribute. It could be more time consuming. Large meetings tend to be longer and more time consuming. There are a lot more relationships, as we just saw. Adding another member creates more relationships. You often then can run into cliques or coalitions or subgroups and then counter coalitions. A lot of times we have I can't even say that word today. Ostracism, right? Excluding other people from the group. There's also more social loafing. Those are the people that are not participating. They'll let the other people do the work. And there are a few tips on reducing social loafing. Always have objectives for each meeting and performance goals. Set timelines. What is due when? Have sub due dates, right? Before the big due date. What's your accountability? How are you going to hold each other accountable? right? How do you encourage team identity? How do you encourage ownership in the team, right? Make sure you're communicating and staying in contact with. So those are a few tips on dealing with larger groups. Not a lot of this is not going to apply. Our group project is very abbreviated. It's not over a half a semester long. And so some of these are just good information for your future. Let's dive into the next video, which is going to cover group and team dynamics.